Yes, hello, and welcome to Release the Creative, your favorite show on creativity, cognition, and this week, do a little dance, make a little love, get down tonight.
Okay.
So, let me ask you a question, Jeff, and it's a real question, because as we discussed beforehand, he has absolutely no idea what today's show's about.
I'm flying in blind on this one.
This is great! It's like a little grab bag of fun. Also, if you are joining us on YouTube, this is the first time that we'll also be live streaming it on TikTok. So you are watching this recorded, but TikTok is here live. So as I'm asking audience things, we'll be, it's just all sorts of multisensory today.
Okay, yeah, let's go for it.
So, define performance.
Performance, like in a very general sense?
As specific or general. Also, prepare your audiences at home. Your answers. Define performance. Yes.
Oh, boy. Performance is a measurement of when you set out to accomplish something. Performance is your rating as to how close you came to accomplishing that task.
Interesting. Okay. Wrong word.
Okay.
Performance is in like a performance, like a play,
theatrical.
Or a theatrical. But I don't want to, because singing is a performance.
Yeah. Well, no, I would say performance in that sense is anything that is done to communicate something intentionally.
Something done to, okay. Well, and in that way, it actually ties back to your analytics. You know, how is something performing? How is something demonstrating your intention?
Yeah, they nest, I guess.
Okay. So, before the whole COVID thing, you know, when a school did a performance, this weekend we'll be putting on a performance of the third grade class is doing, a performance was a very set thing. Come to this thing at this time and view this performance. And it was a very, whether it was singing, acting, dancing, whatever, it was a really easy to couch it as you will be sitting in a dark room and watching a thing occur.
Very, very clear.
How has COVID and before COVID, the modern internet changed what a performance is?
I mean, it's mostly pushed it online.
Okay.
I mean, there's exceptions there, but no, I mean, that's a lot of, yeah, our business, we're in the video production business. We have changed a lot of our work, changed from going places and meeting people to doing what we're doing here. Okay.
How has it affected asynchronicity? Super not a word. Asynchronicity. The asynchronous nature. It used to be that to go see a performance, you sat in a dark room with other parents that didn't want to be there. I love my children's performances. And you watched. But now, how a YouTube clip is performing or how...
You're saying everything is interactive now.
Anything, yeah, exactly. So the question is, did that change the definition of performance, or are we doing something different now than performing? It used to be that a radio show was a performance, but now it's interactive. Yeah. Did that change the definition of performance, or did that change what we were doing from performing to something else?
Well, it's interesting. There still are little corners of the internet where people put things out and don't have a place to reply. No, there's no comments.
There's no comment section.
You know, and that exists in certain places, and it is now feel weird when I come across them. It's always done intentionally.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's still a thing, but you're right. That's the outlier now.
Right. Well, I mean, even on TikTok, and well, all of them, YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, all of them, every once in a while I'll come across a TikTok or a Twitch channel that I really, really love, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And I'll click on comments. It's like, this user has deactivated comments on this post. I'm like, I understand why, because of what I was about to say. I'm not a troll. I'm just saying I can see why someone would choose that, but interactivity has seemed to be the point. Whereas before, from a performance, all you were looking for was applause. Now we're looking for engagement.
Yeah, I got ruined there. This was years ago, a decade ago. I started reading a blog where a guy posts newspaper comments and then makes some kind of quippy comment about them. And after reading this blog for about 5 years, I realized that I couldn't enjoy newspaper comics in the newspaper anymore, because as soon as I was done reading it, I wanted to know what somebody else thought. Right,
like you were looking which makes it almost performance art. So a TikTok user, Mallory the Exmo, says that performance is an artistic form of expression. And I really like that. We're actually going to revisit that one. That cues up my next point beautifully, Mallory. Thank you. But that brings a really good point, is that it used to be that you went and you read Zitz or Dilbert or whatever, and you're like, that's Scott Adams. He's hysterical. and then you walked away. But now Scott Adams is actually just the Q, the T for the comment section or the Reddit page that is almost more fun, or not more fun, but is a extension of that fun. It's like comparing going to the baseball game versus watching a baseball game at home. One is the game and one is the experience.
Yeah.
Okay, which brings me to my next question. And this one, no, there could be an entire podcast, not episode, but podcast about this one. So it's not a fair question, but what is art? Define, if performance, as Mallory says, is the artistic expression, then what is art?
At its broadest, I've always defined art as the process by which we humans take an electrical impulse in our brain and convey it to someone else. And
wouldn't that just be communication?
Yeah. Well, and so in that sense, yes, language, communication, just journalism, all of that's art on a very broad degree.
Okay.
So like I would call all of that art, which is why we have prizes for journalism. What's the Pulitzer Prize if journalism isn't art? What's the point of it? Why?
Excellence in journalism, not necessarily excellence in art.
Yeah, well, how would you measure that? Like most newspapers sold, that's not how they judge the Pulitzer Prize. They judge it on other factors. So,
that's a good point.
You know, I'd say journalism is art, or you would have a computer algorithm that told you who was the best journalist. The fact that there's more to it than that shows that it is.
You're right, because syndication, circulation isn't necessarily, because like, okay, I apologize to everyone. This is super not in even my own script, but I have to ask. So I am relatively moderate, left-leaning moderate. Jeff is not moderate. He's left. Question.
Okay.
Is Ann Coulter, Rush Limbaugh, is shock jockery an art form in and of itself? Or are they just assholes?
Well, that brings up...
is outrage an art?
That brings up an interesting question. First I was going to say, yes, they are art. But then you were about to say, is assholery art? And in general, yeah. If someone goes to a bar and starts pushing people and trying to get into a fight, that's performance art.
Assault and battery, live on stage. Interesting.
So, I mean, we're very broad here. Basically, almost anything humans do is art, but you can start to narrow it down between, I always have a great respect for what we call craftsmen. If you are to design a railing on a staircase, the job is don't fall off the stairs. But
Fair.
if you were to make it spirally and you know, do iron work and make it beautiful, well, that's artistic, but it's still serving a purpose.
So now that's an artisan, not just a craftsman.
An artisan / craftsman are injecting beauty into utility.
Absolutely.
And so that I count that as art, but I think when someone says what is art, they're already asking you to exclude that.
You think?
When they ask that question, if they're trying to narrow it down in a certain sense, when they say what is art, just to show the absurdity of this, a Zack Snyder movie counts for more art points than a beautiful iron railing.
Whoa, really?
And now I would say...
First off, no.
No, I would say the beautiful railing has more value in the world, but I would say...
Sorry, Zack Snyder. I mean, not really, you're a hack.
The movie has more art points. And when people say, what is art? That's what they're going for. They're looking for something that is less utility. Honestly, having utility kind of makes something less artistic in a way.
This is fascinating. I think is any expression of emotion. Mallory, you are reading my mind today. That is where I'm going. That was TikTok user Mallory the Exmo again. So first, one of my favorite TikTokers is at the Iconoclass. TikTok is really hard to find people because of the way they spell things and stuff, but look her up. She's from Melbourne, Australia. She's all about art history. She's my favorite art history TikToker, which is a thing. And she actually talked a little bit about what you were talking about, how everyone, if you say name a Renaissance artist, everyone can name like 5 because they start with the Ninja Turtles,
yep,
and then they add someone.
2 more.
Then you think just more. There were 4 Ninja Turtles, Jeff, so you only need to add 1 more.
No, I think people can come up with 6. That's my point.
Fair enough. Yeah, if you say name your favorite Renaissance artist, people can just start rattling them off. You're like, great, name your famous medieval artist. And they go, and they can't do it. Because, as I learned from the Iconoclast, which again, I love her stuff. It's so awesome. She talks about how because before the Renaissance, artists in general were considered craftsmen. Hey, I want you to put a painting on that wall. And that was That was just
even into the Renaissance, we put those people on a higher pedestal. But at the time, you hired Michelangelo to paint your ceiling.
Right.
That's a craftsman.
It was a craft. It was a skilled. It was just a skilled laborer. It was like, hey, you build the banister, you make the ceiling not white. That's your job.
They just really went overboard.
Yeah, he overthought that little bit. Okay, so I'm the worst like self-promoter ever because like I feel bad promoting things that have to do with me. Like I have no problem saying the Iconoclast on TikTok. You should check her out. She's awesome. But then saying the phrase in my book, I feel like a douchebag. But when I was writing my book, I came across a chapter that we started asking this question, like, what is art? What is communication? What is cognition? What are these things? And I met this guy named Paul Good, and he helped me kind of he had a theory that I am kind of expanding, and I'm actually writing a book about it right now, which is this concept. And that is play. When you think about what play is, any parent has seen their child play. Before they can talk, they first learn that they can make noises. And then they start to like play with that sound. Mm-hmm. They goo and they gaw and they shriek and they giggle because of, hey, look at that sound I made. And then the minute they learn to shriek, that's how they learn to form words. And then they learn to say funny words, and then they learn to rhyme. And then once they learn to form sentences and learn to, Dr. Seuss and make things, well, now by that definition, poetry is playing with your ability to form words.
Right.
And singing is playing with your ability to make sounds. And dancing, as you see, any toddler first learns to walk and then toddle and then walk and then shake their booty. They are playing with their ability to move. That's what ballet is and dance. And then you look at writing, and then it becomes calligraphy. And then you look at finger painting, which becomes Jackson Pollock, but very narrow margin there. And then art, is the creative expression of cognition. If all I'm doing is, Jeff, 2 + 2 is 4. That's not art. That is an expression. That is me.
That's a fact.
That is communicating a piece of information. But if I wrote you a limerick that ended in that, I'm now playing with my ability. I am testing the boundaries of communication, and that's art in all its forms. Sculpture. I am playing with my ability to reflect the world through stone or clay or whatever. Art becomes from a transmission standpoint, not a reception standpoint. From a transmission standpoint, art and performance become play with your boundaries of cognition and communication. And to that degree, that's why the Pulitzer Prize goes to the best artist, the person who conveyed those facts, be they photographic or journalistic, the most evocatively.
Yeah, I think your little TikTok over there.
He just demeaned all of you.
Said the word emotion, and I kind of see that as the dial, as how you turn up art.
Okay.
So like, yeah, all communication is art, but the 2 + 2 is 4 has 0 emotion, so it's the floor.
Okay.
and doesn't really get off the ground. And the more emotion you put into something, the higher it goes. And I think this is what they always say. The artist's intent matters way less than how it's received, because it's about generating that emotion. And
interesting.
If you tried to put emotion into something and it didn't resonate, then there isn't emotion there. It doesn't matter what your intent was.
So then that actually raises up a really interesting question. I was having this exact conversation with my brother-in-law in July when I was giving him my theory on this. And he's like, BS. The artist's intent has nothing to do with art. I'm like, nope, I'm pretty sure it does. He's like, no, art is determined by the receiver. I decide whether something is art. If I think that a surgeon is doing something amazing and they do something of amazing skill and I go, oh my gosh, that man's not a surgeon, he's an artist, that is for me, the receiver, to determine. He can go, no, I'm a technician, I am just really good at my job. It wasn't up to him to determine what he was doing was art. It was up to the receiver. And I think there's a lot of interesting gray area there. Is art defined by the person playing with the boundaries and transmitting, or is art defined by those receiving?
I would say that you judge the artist based on their intentions. That, people who try new things and do something new, we laud them for pushing boundaries, right? But the art itself, I think, always has to be judged based on the person receiving it. So it's two things. You're lauding the art or the artist. And
Interesting.
Those can be separate. You could have really great art from a person that you don't respect at all, or the opposite. You could have a complete hack who managed to come up with something brilliant, and they don't have to go together.
So first off, real quick, TikTok user Kelt Misses says, I think that all art is a form of expression that is born from emotion and requires thought. I super agree. But here's my question for what you just said. Andy Kaufman, who was played by Jim Carrey in the movie Man on the Moon. If you don't know, he played Latka in the show Taxi, as well as was a stand-up comedian, was on SNL. He was fired from SNL. He was also the lounge singer Tony Clifton, although he would never admit that. My question for you is that, like, near universally, everyone hated him. Like he got fired from SNL. Like, so my question is, like, was he an artist because he thought it was brilliant and funny and awesome, but it was very, very seldom received on the same wavelength he sent it out? But now we kind of, like I said, Jim Carrey made a movie about it. Where's the art there?
Well, you have two layers there. You said people didn't like him. People around him. There's layers. The people that had to work with him maybe found all of this annoying, but people at home who got to experience his art had a different reaction because they didn't have to put up with it. Likewise, a lot of people love Chevy Chase movies. No one likes working with Chevy Chase.
I only just recently learned that, and it breaks my heart.
Yeah, those are the different concentric circles of hell, I guess. The closer you are to Chevy Chase, the hotter the sun, or something. But yeah, I mean, that comes down to that the same thing can be viewed in a million different ways, and including people.
So then, I love everything you just said, but let me back it up one more and say, so this is where the question becomes about intention again. So Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh, I would say it's pretty hard to deny that they are intentionally pissing people off. Like,
right.
They are saying things in the least diplomatic, angriest, most polarizing way they can. That's their art.
Right.
Was that Andy Kaufman's art as well, except that his form wasn't political? Was his art form outrage? Or was he actually trying to be funny?
I don't know enough about Andy Kaufman to answer that question.
Fair enough.
But I would say that my impression is no, he was creating it for the people who enjoyed it. And so
he just didn't care about the outrage.
With Rush Limbaugh, he's creating the outrage because that's what's marketable.
Sure.
That is the point. The outrage is the point.
Okay.
I think Andy Kaufman, my guess is if people were outraged about things, he viewed that as not his problem, but it wasn't at the point.
I like that. Okay.
But that would, I can't answer that.
Those are solid. I just recently watched the documentary 20 Years in the Making of Jim Carrey made a documentary about him playing Andy Kaufman in Man on the Moon, and he the studio wouldn't let him release it at first, and he finally got it out, and it's wow. I would have hated working on that movie. That's all I'll say. Go see it. It's on Netflix.
I mean, I haven't seen the movie, but I believe he went like full on.
He went insane.
Yeah.
No, like, I mean, there's almost no other way to say it. Jim Carrey went full-fledged. He went full character. Mm-hmm. So much so that the director was so angry and wanted to fire him. And so finally he called Jim Carrey's agent and said, I need to talk to Jim Carrey right now. Mind you, Jim Carrey's on set with it. It was like, I need to talk to Jim Carrey right now. And so the agent goes, let me see if I can get him on the phone.
Get him to come out of his
and
cell.
So they negotiated that Jim Carrey would do a phone call with the agent. And Jim Carrey, in character the whole time, said like that he wasn't on set, that he was just producing it because he was one of the producers, and that he had gotten actually Andy Kaufman to come back for it. And so on the phone with the director, he talks to him and he says, the director's like on the verge of tears. He's like, I just can't deal with it anymore. I can't do with it. And he's like, tell you what, he's like, if you want, if it's too hard, I'm kind of okay at impressions. I'll call Andy and I'll fire Andy. I'll handle that for you.
And I'll finish the movie.
And if you want, I will come on, and it won't be as good a movie because I'm not going to impersonate Andy Kaufman nearly as well as Andy Kaufman's going to be Andy Kaufman. But if you want, I'll finish the movie doing an Andy Kaufman impersonation.
But I'll be there on time.
But you have to tell me, is that what you want? And the director said, no, Jim, that's okay. I'll keep working with Andy. I just really needed to talk to my friend Jim. And that's the one time in the 9 months of making that movie that Jim Carrey was seen by anyone. Jim Carrey's, Andy Kaufman's sister and wife left the set in tears because he would not break character, and he was that, like, and so to that point, my question then, we talk about Jim Carrey. Is that an art form, or is that a psychosis? Like,
well, I think
no wrong answers.
Anything humans do, you can't really separate what you're doing from the process. The human brain does not make a lot of sense, and whether we are making movies where if someone is that in character, or if we're building rockets to send people to the moon, it's all fairly absurd.
It is. I think one of my favorite representations of that was Peter Sellers. Peter Sellers, if you don't know, he played Inspector Clouseau on the old Pink Panther movies. He was in Dr. Strangelove as Dr. Strangelove. He was a very, very prolific character actor of the 50s, 60s, 70s. And he was on the show The Muppet Babies, the old, the variety show.
The original Muppet show.
The original theatrical Statler and Waldorf variety show. And in every episode, there was, much like Saturday Night Live, there was all these sketches, but there would always be one where the character would come out as themselves. Mark Hamill came out as Mark Hamill.
Right.
And Peter Sellers was set to come out, and they said, so we're going to have you come out just as Peter Sellers. He's like, but who do you want me to be? And he's like, we want you to be you. And he's like, no.
File not found.
I don't know what that means. They're like, just come out and be yourself. And he's like, I don't know what that means. And like, I hear this story and it makes me so sad for, like, they're like, okay, put it this way, come out as whoever you want. So if you go back and watch that old Muppet Babies episode, Peter Sellers came out in full regalia as Queen Elizabeth. And he did it in character as Queen Elizabeth because Peter Sellers had no concept or understanding, at least in character, of what coming out of character meant. His art was so performance-based that he didn't know how to not do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely get it. I'm having very little problem doing this podcast every week. I used to do improv performing, and I'd get up on a stage in front of an audience.
Right.
But you know me, if you took me to a party, I don't talk to people. I get very anxious and very shy, and I have a lot of trouble approaching people,
Right.
But when it comes to this, or like even in a live audience, public speaking, and
do you have a public speaking problem?
No. Do you? I see you were a grade younger than me, so you probably weren't in it. Do you recall when I was I think junior, maybe sophomore, I ran for class secretary.
I do not remember that.
And there was an assembly. Most people do that because they're popular and like they have, they're on the football team or they're in the key club.
That's not how I roll.
And I saw the thing that was like sign up to run, and I was like, sounds like fun.
Why secretary?
And because I didn't want to aim too high.
It's like, I read Icarus. I know how that is.
But yeah, I made some posters. I hung them up. I did not talk to anyone. I didn't like enlist friends to help pass. Other people campaigned.
You didn't campaign.
I did nothing except they had a. It's not a debate. It was like you got up. They had a whole auditorium of the whole class, which would not have been your grade, the whole grade level.
Yeah, so that's why I didn't know that.
And so it was the high school auditorium, which is 1/4 of our high school. Was it like 125 people in there? And everybody got up and like said.
My graduating class was 690 people. So no.
No. Okay. What? I don't even remember.
So like 500.
500 people. And I got up, I gave my speech. I lost the election, and I was like, cool. And like,
that's the other thing about you. You had no emotional investment in it either.
Yeah, it was
You're
just
a sociopath.
Like a thing that I tried. I was like, I saw it. I was like, that feels like something I should try.
I did not have that reaction.
And but yeah, I didn't put any effort into like actually winning. But yeah, I run into people now. It's been 21 years since high school, and I meet people that are like. Know other people in our friend group, and I feel really bad when I was like, I think I remember your name, and they're like, oh yeah, you're Jeff. You used to hang out with Lori and Kirk, and like they tell me stuff about myself. I'm like, how did you know me? And it was just kind of like
reflected glow from the like.
Well, no, I mean the thing is like I am anxious and shy in some situations, but then have no problem getting up in front of 500 people and talking about myself, and like those people remember that.
Interesting.
So it's anyway. I'm getting back to. I understand the Peter Sellers not having a be yourself,
right?
Because I don't know that I have a yourself.
Right.
Like, I mean, what you see right here is pretty much me.
Sure. No, absolutely.
But if this were a party with 30 people and it was like, hey, somebody come get over on the mic, let's see what you have to say, I wouldn't do that.
No.
Like, I'm doing this because this is the podcast we do. And basically it's expected. And that's what I liked about improv performing was we got up and we're like, hey, we're six.
It's expected to be unexpected?
Well, no, it's like, hey, we're 6 idiots. You're going to watch us for 20 minutes. And the audience is like, okay. And like, once you have that sort of like permission, I have no problem public speaking or being in front of people.
Interesting. Okay.
But it's the like speaking up when nobody asks you. That's the part that kind of short circuits my brain.
So TikTok user Mallory the Expo again says, I think it's an art form. I think it's an art form if he is in control and if he can choose whether he's in or out of character. And it's kind of what you're saying is that, Peter Sellers, he didn't
know, but he had that conversation.
What's that?
He didn't know what character to be, but he could have that conversation.
Right.
Yeah, he didn't just suddenly be Queen Elizabeth talking to the producers.
Right. And it's interesting. You're like, no, I'm fine to put my art on canvas. The stage is the canvas, and I'm fine to be an artist. But I'm not willing to offer you myself, or I don't have myself to offer. Like I will paint anything you want on stage, but I'm not on the menu.
Yeah. And I kind of get the Jim Carrey taking the phone call thing. That really strikes. It feels to me like sometimes like on the weekend when you don't have to get up and the sun's coming in and you wake up just a little bit and you're having a good dream,
right? And
you're like, no, I want to finish the dream. And you know that like if you sit up, it's done,
right?
But you can kind of half fall asleep and have it again, and like that's kind of what he was doing.
He's like, look, if you need me to wake up and be a professional, and I mean, I don't even mean disrespectful Jim Carrey there. Yeah. If you need me to wake up and be a professional actor, I can do that. But I would much rather come in and be Andy Kaufman.
And yeah, and he had to do it over the phone because just doing it in person would be like getting out of bed.
Well, and so to that, it's interesting. I love this particular. Hey, Kim. So. To that exact point, so I was watching a documentary about Kiss, and so Gene Simmons was on the documentary, and he was talking about the like heyday, the 70s and early 80s of Kiss, and talking about how when they came off stage and they were coming out the doors, things like that, they would wear hats and dark glasses and bandanas over their faces because even though they looked different, they looked that if someone saw, oh, well, that's Gene Simmons, or that he said it's the exact same as suddenly seeing your dad take off the beard and realizing that Santa Claus is your dad. He's like, the Kiss had to be Kiss, and Kiss had to be these rock stars. It had to, and if you pop that bubble, it stops being a performance. It starts being real. And
I remember in like the first or second season of Family Guy, they had Kiss on the show. I don't know if it was them or voice actors, but they were in the show, and I remember they were in makeup, like they were at Denny's in makeup, just eating pancakes in makeup, and like it's a cartoon world, but it felt so right. It's like you wouldn't. Of course, they look like that when they go to Denny's.
And I mean, I think the other people that have kind of in a more modern era who have done that, I just forgot their name. I'm going to feel like such an idiot in a second when I remember. It's not Run DMC. It's, oh my gosh.
A lot of musicians, honestly.
No, no, I feel like such an idiot. Their most recent album, they wore helmets, and you never see their faces.
Devo?
No, that was the 80s. Modern, Jeff. Modern. Get with the now. Someone help me out.
Helmets, I don't know. I very rarely know what artists look like.
Get up off the phone. Get up off the phone. Da, 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 da. Come on, get happy. Oh my gosh, it's going to drive me crazy. I feel like such an idiot. Someone has to help me out here. What's the band I'm thinking of? You guys can't help on YouTube because this is pre-recorded, but TikTok, come on.
Very disappointed in TikTok right now.
I am too, and I can't look it up because my phone is being used. Pharrell Williams did the vocals recently. Oh my gosh, it's going to drive me up the wall. Anyway, no, but people, or let's use Sia. Sia recently stopped showing her face in her own videos because she wanted to maintain a difference between her private life and her vocal life. And so she doesn't do videos of her face anymore, even though you can Google her face and know what she looks like. Even when she like appeared on the Ellen DeGeneres show and things like that, she didn't appear. Like her face was, even being interviewed by Ellen, she wasn't on camera, which is eccentric to the point of weird, but it's these people trying to separate their performance from their personal, and it raises all these interesting questions of, of that whole art thing is art in the transition, in the sending or the receiving, and where is the difference between persona and performance. And I think you're actually a really good example of that, because like you said, you are very shy and reserved 90% of the time, and then can turn it on, and you're not being fake. It's just a different persona.
Yeah.
Whereas this is me, cameras on or off.
Yeah, you change very little.
I mean, I speak a little differently. I'm speaking with a different part of my throat, but that's just because schooling. No, it's really going to drive me crazy that I can't remember the name of this band, and I keep wanting to say Run DMC, but that's super duper not it. Anyway. So application, as you know, we always end with kind of like, how does this apply? In business, in entrepreneurship, you know, we're not everyone, you know, well, I'm a widget maker and I make and sell, I distribute widgets. So back to Mallory the XMO, it's got to be hard to be constantly performing as someone else. See, I would say it's almost, so to that point, so Dr. House, Hugh Laurie in House, he talked about how from the moment he showed up till the moment he left everybody, he wouldn't stay in character because nobody wants to work with Greg House,
Right.
But he would never drop the accent. Not at lunch, not during meetings. From the moment he arrived on the soundstage till the moment he left, he was not Greg House, he was Hugh Laurie, but he stayed in those mannerisms. He walked with the cane. He stated it because he found that the difficulty came from the switching. The difficulty came from switching between House and Hugh, so he didn't do it.
Yeah.
And then it becomes that thing of, are you putting on a persona or are you just... Yeah,
it's hard to turn off. I've done a little bit of voiceover work in my career, and it's on a very small...
Daft Punk! Thank you!
What did I say?
I don't remember. Oh, you said Devo.
Yeah, I was thinking of the same people.
Daft Punk is absolutely who I was thinking
I
of.
couldn't come up with the name either, but
Thank you,
definitely thinking of them.
Everyone follow Kay Derryberry and Mallory the XMO and Kelt Misses on TikTok. They're the ones...
for all your Daft Punk needs.
There are 5 people, but for all your Daft Punk needs, I do love Daft Punk. I feel so terrible. But yeah, they've been together for years and years and years, but... You can find pictures of them if you want to, if you like go out of your way to find them, but they are always face obscured in performances and music videos.
Yeah.
Because of this whole thing of they want to separate their personas from their personal life and their but like I started to, how do we apply this to entrepreneurship, and how do we apply this to, is there a performance of being a CEO?
I mean,
I would say yes.
Yeah, I mean, are you intending this conversation to bleed into work-life balance, or is that a separate issue?
No, I think that's actually the exact issue. It's that. So, I mean, the whole concept of the podcast, as you know, but for those that are new or joining us today from TikTok, as we are just piloting this experiential, the concept is releasing creative into your business life, because a lot of people, like even us, we work in a creative field, and after hours I do leatherworking because I need to do something else. I need to have a creative outlet, and I work in a creative field, so that becomes. But you have these people that they work in finance, and we're talking about how do you release that creativity in a mundane or non-creative field. So my question is, in these performance and these artistic and these creative that are more definitively, this is a performance. And it's all about being authentic these days, but how can we apply these artistic and creative boundaries to the personas we have at work? Because whether or not you want to, you have a different persona at work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even...
You know me, you know all of my personas, but you'd say there's very much a different persona. You've seen all of them.
Even at different times, depending on who you're dealing with, it can change from hour to hour.
Thanks. But like...
Oh no, I meant in general, not just you.
Yeah, that's fair. But, so everyone has their, this is home Kirk, this is work Kirk, this is fun Kirk, this is drunk at the club Kirk. There is no drunk at the club Kirk. That Kirk doesn't exist. No, really. I'm not that cool. Nobody invites me to clubs. But how do you bring your creative side, your zany side, your artistic side, your performance side into a realm that doesn't call for it? How do you be Peter Sellers on stage and be in the exact opposite? How do you bring that zane? And I mean, this is a real open-ended question.
Yeah, I'm thinking of I can talk about examples, but yeah, trying to distill it down to a like rule book is difficult.
Sure. Give me an example.
It's interesting, like, of course, you know, where my mind always goes whenever you ask a question is to Star Trek.
I was going to say improv, but Star Trek,
yes,
yeah.
Star Trek.
Yeah.
No, yeah, everything you've just said has been making me think about, so we're right now into season 3 of Star Trek Discovery.
I really need to watch this show.
Season 2 focused on, they had Anson Mount played Captain Pike. And
his real name is Ensign Mount?
Anson Mount.
Oh, Anson. Okay. I thought it was Ensign. I was like, that's hysterical.
No, Anson. And he's, you know, the third actor to play this character now, because he was on the show originally in the 60s, and then
briefly on
Bruce Greenwood played him in the alternate universe.
Yeah.
And so this is yet a third version of this character.
Right.
And he was on for the whole season, and he, you know, he's captain of the Enterprise, but he came in for the season to be temporary captain of Discovery.
Sure.
And so it was an interesting, this is kind of a work thing that you'll come across in your life, which was everyone knows he's temporary, but he's still in charge. And so it's like, you don't want to step on toes.
Sure.
You have to be authoritative and you have to be in command, but also you don't want to, you know, be overbearing or micromanagey. It's like,
sure.
I understand you guys know what you're doing, and I'm here to give orders, but also to listen. And so this was not like a big plot point of the season, but it's an interesting, if you watch the season, you got to see clearly the actor kind of approached the role this way, where he was dealing with that, not through dialogue, but just the way he did his character.
Sure.
It's everything you just said reminded me of that entire.
Is that he had to apply a kind of persona to it, like
yeah, and he, I mean, I said they didn't write it in. They the first scene where he comes in to the bridge and he's introducing himself, one of the ensigns accidentally puts his service record up on screen because she's like a klutz, and she's like, I'm sorry, and he's like no, leave it there, and he walks up and he's like yeah, look, I got that medal and I won this war, and you know, like all and he's like, but look, at the academy I failed physics or whatever, you know,
so you're better at physics than me, or whatever.
He's like I'm just human, and you know, I've got some cool things about me, but also a lot of very average things.
Wait,
about
it was
me.
her report or his report?
His report. She accidentally threw his service record up on screen, and she was like, I'm sorry, I'm going to take it down. And he's like, no, everybody look at this. He's like, I'm not, because he's a hero at this point. Everybody knows who he is.
Right.
So he's kind of trying to be like, I'm just human. Don't put me on a pedestal. And then he kind of, you know, took that attitude through the whole season.
No, and it's an interesting thing, and this is super not to what today's podcast is about, and maybe we should do one on this, but it's this really interesting dichotomy between, right now, the big buzzword in all of the world is authenticity. Oh, you have to be authentic. By the way, guys, that's bullshit. And the reason it's bullshit is because a lot of people, myself included, are authentically an asshole. So you can't be authentic. It'll turn people off. You have to, like, you know, put some salt and vinegar on those chips. No, that would be being more of an asshole. Sugar and spice, I suppose. But, like, there's this real interesting dichotomy of, you know, you can't be fake. You have to be authentic. But you also have to present in a way that is professional and approachable. And there are people that aren't professional and approachable. So if they're authentic, so there's this real interesting, and to his point, like, he had to be authentic and real, and he wanted people to see that he wasn't all that special, but he also has to be professional. And there's an interesting line between being that creative representation of yourself, but still all those other things. So what would be, like, if we were to end with a solid takeaway, what is a solid, like, a 1-2 punch, everyone else would say, at the end of the day, just be authentic and you'll be fine. And I will tell you that anyone who says that is using it as a buzzword and has not thought it through, because it's just not true.
I mean, that's a trope. How many times have we seen in the movie, like, how do I date the girl? And someone says, just be yourself. And the character will literally say, that won't work.
It's like, I will be anyone but myself. And actually, this is really interesting. That's a really good example. People say that all the time. They go, you know, hey, she'll like you if you just be yourself. That's not true. And it wasn't true then either. What it means is that when she likes you for just being yourself, it'll turn out okay, because you don't have to keep pretending.
What it means is be yourself, and eventually someone will respond positively to that.
Right.
But we're talking statistics here, not individuals.
Not individuals. On the macro, it doesn't work very well at all. So I think it's more that you have to be believable. People don't want to think you are being fake. I agree with that.
That's true.
Being authentic is like, yeah, if I say, hey, buddy, old pal, come on down, and I'm wearing a pinky ring and a gold chain and I'm trying to sell you a car, like, it's you have to be authentic to the point where people have to believe that this is genuine. You do have to be genuine. I like that.
Yeah, you can leave out the asshole comments, but the things you do say need to be true. You don't flip it to where like, well,
in my experience, I can't actually leave out the asshole comment.
Yeah, that's your problem, but
it is in fact.
You like, I hate this thing, I'm not going to say it. You can't then come out and say I love this thing. It's the old, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Like you say nice things about the things you have nice feelings about.
Sure.
And you don't say mean things about things you have bad feelings about.
Sure.
And that is authentic and kind. But you can't lie. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And so it's this real interesting dichotomy. So, I mean, we're coming to the end of this episode, but I think that the real, I was going to say snake in the ointment, but that's not a thing.
Let's make it a thing. I love fake idioms.
The real snake in the ointment, we need that on a t-shirt now.
Let's tie up this puppy and finish this.
Let's tie up this puppy and finish this. Okay, mine was a reference to a scam. Yours is a reference to like animal abuse.
We're taking a diversion here, but my favorite solitaire game, which is a game you can play with yourself, is
no idea where this is going.
You know the phrase "Let's blow this popsicle stand."
Yeah.
So the "Let's blow this popsicle stand" just simply means, all right, let's get out of here. This isn't interesting anymore, right? How many other ways can you say that, but it is still clearly means that? And so
let's make like a tree and get out of here.
Yeah, it's got to be something that is new, that nobody's heard before, but the first time they hear it, they understand what you mean.
Interesting.
So things like what one would be like, let's well, I just said one. Let's tie this puppy up. Like if I said let's tie this puppy up, you get it. It means
I do.
Let's finish doing this thing.
I'm disturbed, but I get it.
And leave. Or it's like let's shut this car down. Nobody's ever said that in this way, but like that one's pretty.
So what's funny about this one is that I came up with one a few years ago that I clearly meant one thing by, and I said it for years, and as I would say it, people would look at me like that's the most disturbing thing ever, and I had been saying it for probably 5 years before I realized that they thought I meant something else.
Do you remember what it is?
I do. And this is how we're going to kind of like wrap it up.
This is our conclusion.
And what the funniest part is that both what they heard and what I meant ended at the same place, but in drastically different ways.
Oh, I hate. Well, I love and hate like small things like comic strips. Like movies you can interpret forever, but a comic strip where you can interpret the punchline 2 different ways.
And both of them funny?
Both of them funny, both of them legitimate, both of them set up. Which way did they mean it? It drives me crazy.
Right. So first, to make this make sense, I was referencing the 1992 seminal classic, Keanu Reeves, Sandra Bullock, Speed.
Of course.
In the opening scenes, the Jeff Daniels character is in a headlock by Dennis Hopper, and he's under Keanu Reeves has his gun on him, and he goes, "What do you do, hotshot? What do you do?" And Jeff Daniels says, "You shoot the hostage." To his partner, Keanu Reeves, who then shoots him. He shoots his own partner in the leg, so he loses his weight, so he's able to shoot Dennis. It doesn't end that well, but the concept was that in that situation, Keanu Reeves had to shoot his partner, who was the hostage.
Right.
So for years, I said, sometimes you just got to shoot a hostage.
Yeah, I don't see people going to the Sandra Bullock classic Speed from that quote.
No, I see that now. My ripened age of 38, I now see the error of the phrase. But how everyone else thought, they meant that I was clearly the kidnapper, and sometimes you have to execute a hostage, which is not what I meant.
No, yeah, like I wouldn't have jumped to Speed, but I immediately took it as, well, you got to break some eggs to make an omelet, or whatever that phrase is.
That's the other one. Like sometimes it made, and so we would be in a meeting like at the government. I was like, hey, sometimes you just got to shoot a hostage, and people would look at me with like slack-jawed horror, and I'm like, man, why do people hate Speed? It was 5 years before I realized that people thought I was saying execute someone, not shoot them in the leg.
Well, as in the immortal words of Milhouse, it's like Speed 2, but with a bus instead of a boat.
Milhouse says that?
Yeah. There's a runaway bus episode of The Simpsons, and Milhouse is.
So why not just say it's like Speed?
Well, that's why it's The Simpsons.
Jeez. Okay. So sometimes you got to shoot a hostage. And by that, I mean shoot Jeff Daniels in the leg, not execute an individual who didn't do anything wrong.
And that's our lesson.
Don't shoot Jeff Daniels in the leg is clearly the takeaway here.
Yep.
Not execute a hostage. No, you have to bring creativity and bring yourself in a genuine fashion. And that doesn't mean being fake, but it also doesn't mean being, you should be authentic. But that's not the lesson here. The lesson is that creativity and performance and bringing out your creativity and pushing the lines of how you communicate is essential. It really is. You can't just use idioms and recycled things. You have to bring yourself and your new ways to find the new poetry and the new dance and the new ways of doing the old problems, because it's in reinventing the wheel that we discover the next wheel. We don't, to use a quote that was never said by Henry Ford, if I asked people what they wanted, they'd have said a faster horse. First off, Henry Ford didn't invent the car. Second off, he never said that. But if all we do is do what people think we're going to do, and all we do is what they ask for, we only get faster horses, we never get the car. We have to push the lines of communication. We have to push the lines of boundaries. And just because I remember in the early days of Glass River, you're like, well, this is what everyone else is doing. And I was like, I put absolutely no faith in that's the way people do it. And I think that we all need to take a little bit, we need to readdress, especially in our communication, how we're getting messages across. Because sometimes you'll say something like, sometimes you need to shoot a hostage, which worked for me for years, even though I didn't know what other people thought I meant by it. But it's that's how we grow, both as people, both as communicators, and as entrepreneurs. It's by pushing those communication boundaries and pushing our own cognitive boundaries.
Works for me.
Awesome.
We will see you next week. This was Release the Creative. Thanks for joining us here at Release the Creative. Kirk here would never say it to your face, but he thinks you should like and subscribe to us on YouTube.
And Jeff is far too shy to admit it, but he thinks you should subscribe to us on your favorite podcast reader.
Yeah? Well, you're the one who's always saying that everyone should give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
Why do you have to make everything so difficult?